Hello and welcome back to the channel. We'll be covering episode 7 of the Acolyte dubbed Choice, and I'm very excited for this episode as I think we're finally getting an answer for what happened on Brendok, because we still have a lot of unanswered questions from episode 3, as, you know, how did Osha and May's mother die? What happened to the rest of the witch coven? Was it really May that caused all this kind of like chaos and destruction? How did Torben get his face messed up so badly? And if the suggestion that it was Kelnaka that was responsible, why did he do it? So we've got a lot of questions to be answered. This is the second to last episode of the Acolyte, so I'm hoping that we will get the answers for Brendok, as I'm getting a little bit nervous as we've not got a great deal of time left this season and a lot of answers yet to cover. So without further ado, let's get into the actual episode and hopefully find out what happened on Brendok. I also wonder if there is a link between this so-called witch coven and Kimir, or the dark side user, the stranger. Like, how is that connected, if that's connected? So, I'm wondering if we're going to get any answers to that this episode. Also, the fact that her body was lying face down to kind of cover up any potential lightsaber scorch marks, also interesting. Also, this kind of slightly dark undertone from Sol here. Yep, looks like we're going back to Brendok, 16 years before, so we're finally getting some answers. Let's go. And I'm glad that we're picking up from the Jedi perspective, as I think picking up from the twins again would be a little bit... Also just looks like they're doing like a geographical survey rather than like looking for a supposed like dark side coven. So I'm wondering if they kind of stumbled upon this all by accident, or if it was like a kind of more sinister kind of oppression, as it were, that the witches are kind of seeming to suggest. Because it does look all like very, very, very innocent. Like there doesn't look to be anything sinister here.
Because of a hyperspace disaster. Yet this
Hyperspace disaster. I like the High Republic references.
We are looking for a virgins.
A virgins?
What's a virgins?
Active. Nothing could be more important to the
So
Jedi.
May and Osha are potential virgins in the Force.
This is
I
a
would
noble
have
mission.
thought that the act of their creation is more of the virgins rather than themselves, but I'm curious. So, what are they, like Force detectors? I think this is where May and Osha were under that tree. I want to say, yeah, it's the same tree. So that's how they knew they were Force sensitive. I would have thought if they were there for 7 months, they would have discovered a big old structure with, like, facilities in it. But I get you. Well, if it's the whole planet, I suppose it's a pretty big area to cover, so it's possible. It's gonna climb the... I mean, I respect it. That's not gonna be easy. Oh, so he saw everything. And Dara's going in with the right kind of way of trying not to seem imposing and threatening, because Jedi are a very, very big threat. Or can be seen as such, I suppose. Ooh. I've been curious as to what's happened to Torben. Similar to what the stranger was doing. It's so interesting with that we're getting it from the Jedi's perspective as well, because I think watching it from the witch's point of view left you with a very different conclusion than what it did with the Jedi. With the witches, you did almost think that the Jedi had an ulterior motive, but here it does genuinely seem that they were just surveying the planet, looking for a kind of disturbance in the Force, and just naturally came across this. It is slightly odd that Sol feels this kind of connection after, like, what, a day? If that? Like, it's not been a long period of time. I'm very, very interested to hear the results of the kind of blood levels. That was an indication when we had Anakin with their kind of Force potential, as it were, through the midichlorians. So I'm curious as to what this is going to return.
The Jedi will not warn you before they attack.
Ah.
Good girl. Get mad. She is a child.
That's where the problem's going to come in. Okay. Oh, Sol. It's a very delicate situation here, because whilst I think the witches in part are being somewhat aggressive, the Jedi shouldn't be involved. They've been ordered not to be involved, in fact. Like, ugh. Okay, so she did actually start a fire that started frying stuff. I didn't know if that was kind of misconstrued.
Someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy.
Oh!
Easy, Tobin.
Holy... What? She just turned into... dust. Oh... What did you do? What was she doing, though? I can't blame May for her perception, to be honest, because that was not wise on Sol's part. Although, this Zabrak lass did not also make a correct judgment either. Torbin's going off on one, though. She's so determined on killing them. Kelnaka. Oh, their power is so interesting. They can just kind of materialize into, what, a form of consciousness and just invade people's minds? It's mad. God, Wookiees can fight. Sol holding its own, like, even in a martial sense against a Wookiee is absolutely insane. Is it all of them that are kind of focusing in order for them to do this? I'm kind of confused in how this works.
Get the twins.
But where's she gone? Is she dead? So, okay, I was always confused as to did May cause that. So it does seem that May legitimately did cause that destruction, but wow. Wait, so he's holding them both? Oh, he chooses Osha. Okay, we finally know what happened on Brendok. It seems so unjust that Indara, who really had nothing to do with the wrongdoings on Brendok, was the first to die, and she didn't even really do anything wrong. Like, Indara was pretty much innocent in this, and if anything was cautioning them not to do anything, yet she had to die first. It's kind of... it's wild. So we finally know what happened on Brendok. I wasn't quite expecting that to tell the complete truth. Now, I thought after we saw episode 3 that it was deliberately left to paint the Jedi in a worse light, and I kind of understood a lot of the criticisms that kind of were baked into that narrative. Now, in this one, however, we get a very, very different story of the Jedi just kind of innocently investigating a divergence in the Force, and then just stumbling across the twins, genuinely being curious about it. I think where the problem comes in here is when Torbin then goes, they're my ticket home. I'm off. Like, he just completely ignores the behest of his master and purely wants to further his own personal ambition, which again is not really the goal of the Jedi. And however, he is a Padawan. He's, you know, prone to making those mistakes. And then Sol is another key issue in this kind of story, in the sense that he is so concerned about the fate of the twins. As Indara says, that he doesn't really give a thought to the consequences, which is a big problem. Now, I think you can also weigh a certain lay of blame to the Witch's Door as well. However, I wouldn't ever go to the extent of suggesting it is one party's fault more than another. I think if the Jedi didn't go there that night, or did go there in a completely separate manner to the way that they did, they may have just averted the crisis altogether, as I think if Sol wasn't in such a kind of charged up state and the environment would have been different, he wouldn't have just killed Anastasia. Now, Anastasia's power and forgive me because I don't know the character's name, the Zabrak lass's power, is very interesting to me, because it seems to be a form of transporting your physical being into another. But your transport, like your entire, like, it's not like you're taking your consciousness and placing it into another, like you're going into a meditative state and then going, I'm controlling this person. No, you're physically disapparating and just merging into someone else's consciousness. It's very interesting, and I don't get why they didn't show what happened to the Zabrak, like in the sense that her body just completely disappeared. Now, I'm a bit confused, as it surely had to go somewhere, or at least maybe it re-apparated or something to that extent. Maybe I'm thinking to potentially with May. Obviously, she's left under that tree. Maybe her second mother comes back to her in that sense, under that tree, because I don't think she is dead. I think they deliberately didn't show anything happening with her other than her being removed from Kalnaka, and the rest of the witches kind of collapsing. We don't even know if they were dead, to be completely honest with you, because they were seemingly involved in this ritual and this chanting, and then just dropped the second Kalnaka was no longer possessed. So I'm kind of confused as to what happened there, but yeah, Sol killing Mother Anastasia was not at all what I had in my guts, especially the way that he killed her, because she was, granted, I think if you're going to transport yourself into a, like, demonic, like, disapparated state, it may be worth giving a kind of a shred of warning. However, again, I can both understand why Sol did what he did, and at the same time criticize it, because he just killed someone. And, I mean, why put your saber there and stab that without the intention of mortally wounding them? Like, surely, yeah, it was an interesting move on Sol's part. And again, I think it was very, very clever of them to kind of bake that idea that it is also, the blame is partially on Sol's. Now, Mother Anastasia, I thought honestly would have done something, but as far as we saw, she was level-headed. While she did dislike the Jedi, she wasn't going to be unreasonable with them. She was pretty hospitable. Like she was a good person, and yet she got cut down by some. It's funny because the innocent parties of both situations were the first to be cut down in that group. For example, the witches, Mother Anastasia was the first to die, and the Jedi, Indara was the first to die. I think that is a deliberate parallel in the sense that it's the innocents that suffered first here, and you can almost now understand why May thought these things about the Jedi, about them killing Mother Anastasia, and I do believe that the kind of second mother, the Zabrak class, is going to re-manifest her into her physical self, and it's going to be the one that either takes May somewhere, because again, it doesn't really make sense for absolutely no one to be left alive on the planet but May, and then all of a sudden this stranger appearing out of nowhere without kind of giving an established connection to him already in this flashback episode. So that leads me to think that the person that possessed Kalnaka will return into their physical self, go to May, and then escort May off world, or summon the stranger, or do something, because there's still a lot of unanswered questions here. However, we have another episode, I believe, because I think there is 8 episodes of The Acolyte, to kind of wrap this all up and explain everything. But I think they've done a really, really good job at portraying the Jedi not just as solely good guys, but in that kind of... They do bear some responsibility in this instance. And I think when Osha finds out, really, the fault of what the Jedi have done in this instance, it's going to destroy her faith in Sol completely. But it is very odd to me as well that Sol did so quickly become emotionally attached and invested, as that is something that is obviously tutored very much against in the Jedi. But yeah, I really like the fact that there is no good and bad guys necessarily in this whole situation, and it's definitely an open discussion. I think you can put blame at both stores. I would say that in terms of starting hostilities, the blame does go to the witches in that respect, but you can understand their kind of how they felt provoked, and how if the Jedi did things differently, they wouldn't necessarily be in that state. However, if you do ask me, or at least in my own opinion, some of those witches were just completely hostile to the Jedi and would have killed them if they came back anyway. So, again, it's a complex situation, and I really did enjoy it. But there are a lot of questions as to where we can go in this last episode. Now, I believe last we saw, Sol was taking May into hyperspace. We don't know where to. There wasn't a route plotted. I think he's going to try and force May to take him to the world where Khmer, or the Stranger, and Osha are, in hopes of rescuing Osha. As that does seem to be Sol's kind of one prerogative, is just rescuing Osha, And that's kind of it. He doesn't really seem to care as much about the consequences as he really should be. So we're going to probably see them going to that mysterious planet now. Many have kind of theorized that this is Boldemnik based off of the Legends novel description of a planet that sounds kind of similar to Boldemnik in the sense that it has cortosis deposits. It's kind of got a tropical kind of feel to it. Lots of small islands surrounded by oceans. Does very much kind of fit the kind of Boldemnik vibe. However, of course, Plagueis is a Legend source of information, so it doesn't necessarily mean that that is part of the continuity. However, it would be interesting if they did choose to bring Boldemnik into the continuity with the Acolyte. So I'd be interested to see that happen. But I am just curious and very much hungry for answers for the next episode, because again we now have everything kind of in the past explained. I think it's time to start concluding things in the present. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that will be all for today's video. Thank you all very much for watching. Please be sure what you thought of this episode. I think it was kind of similar in the vein to episode 3, but I think it was a lot more enjoyable, as we've now had one half of the story, we're now hearing the other, and we did get little kind of terms and hints scattered, like Virgins in the Force. That's a big thing. And we yet to have explained exactly how the twins kind of came to fruition. So do let me know what you thought of this week's episode in the comments. Of course, subscribe, drop a like if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more. I will be covering all, and I have, covered all episodes of The Acolyte so far, and I will be covering the finale on here, so please be sure to check that out when it drops. But, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that will be all. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.